Welcome. I'm Bernice Ross, the CEO and President of Brokerage Up and RealEstateCoach.com, and I'm delighted to have my good friend Michael Lissack with us today. He's an entrepreneur. He's been on Wall Street. He is one of the most creative people I know in the industry, and he has a terrific session for us today called the Do's and Don'ts Post-Lockdown. So we're going to be hearing some best practices and some real doozies and mistakes that agents are making today. Michael, before we kind of start on the topics for today, tell us just a little bit about your background. How did you get into real estate?
So when I left Wall Street, I ended up moving to Florida, became outraged at the fee that I paid my realtor. And then, like almost everybody else that moves to Florida, I chose to become a real estate agent. Now, in Naples, where I moved, there were 200,000 people and 10,000 agents. If you didn't carve out a niche, you were going to be in deep trouble. I realized my niche was internet marketing. So I started heavily doing that. I was one of the few people in Naples that was doing that. I ended up creating a company that helped other people do that. And then my father passed about 6 years ago, so I had to leave Florida and moved up to Boston to take care of my mother. And so I'm selling real estate in Boston, still doing the internet stuff. And I'm our firm's managing broker for the Oregon and Washington offices. So my two main markets where I sell are Boston and Portland, Oregon, but I supervise the people in Seattle. And I still have a Florida license, and I have a California license, and I still do internet stuff.
So you've got licenses in multiple states and you're doing business in multiple states. And that's one of the things I was excited about, because you really do have a national perspective from doing business nationally. So let's talk about one of the don'ts. And we're seeing a lot of people that are using MSS text messaging, kind of, blasting out. What do you see as that, what's wrong with what they're doing and what's the risk?
Okay. So let me give you one that I got today. Well, I was driving in my car. In my car, very politely, is the thing that where it reads you if they send you an SMS message, it reads it to you. And the message was, hope in this pandemic times you're doing well. Remember, as you have real estate needs, I and my team are here for you. We care.
So what's wrong? What's wrong about that? There's so much I can think of.
The only thing that was right about that was we care. But the first thing that was wrong was, if you're going to send out a text message, it needs to be personal. Sending out a mass text message is an invitation to be sued.
So I could get sued over that, and tell me more about that.
Well, let's assume that you're on the do not call list.
Which I am.
Okay, so unless the person sending you this message can prove that they have a prior business relationship with you and that you have given them permission to send you a commercial message, the burden of proof is on you to show that this text was okay. Now, when you make a phone call and you don't reach the person, they may not like the fact that there's no message on their phone, or et cetera, but okay, that's hard to prove that it was commercial. You just sent a text. And 80% of the context of the text was real estate. It's commercial. And if that person was on the do not call list, you're staring at an easy $500 fine. And all they have to do is wander into small claims court.
Now, could they file a complaint with the FCC or, the do not call list? Is there another place that they could file that where they could get fined, that party might be fined as well?
Yes, but the easiest thing to do is that the texting law actually allows you to go in every state into small claims court and get the $500.
Wow. So any state in the United States, you can go to small claims court to get, wow.
So all I'm picturing is this realtor who's starting out, who decides to send this mass message, and she has made a small mistake, because the list that she sent it to is she bought a list of the divorce attorneys in town. Now, in general, they might be good referral sources. But
you don't ever want to text anything to an attorney.
But you cultivate those sources. You don't text to them.
Oh my, never text an attorney unless you've got a business reason that you can show. Oh my goodness.
It's an invitation for them to just send you an invoice.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm not surprised many of them would do. So the best practice here is if you're going to text, make it personal. And secondly, if you're going to, if you are going to do a mass text, that it had very well better be scrubbed against the do not call list.
Oh, absolutely. And I still would say never send a mass text unless you have an awfully good reason. So if you are managing the 4th of July parade and you are sending a note to all the parade marshals, that's a perfectly fine mass text.
Mm-hmm.
If you're managing the PTA and you're changing which end of the parking lot people drive in to pick up their kids, that's a great mass text. I'm available to help you with your real estate needs is a horrible mass text.
Well, so that's mistake number one. Now, many of you have probably heard of and used the Ford model for connection, which is family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. That's a way to connect through a conversation. And right now in today's environment, best practice is to have a care conversation. And what do you mean by that when you say a care conversation, Michael?
Pick up the phone or write an email that says, we're all going through times. How are you holding up? What are you doing to hold up? If you're locked up in the house, how have you been coping? How have you been dealing with the kids or the parents or whomever? But keep the conversation about them, how they're coping, indicate that you actually care about them as people. Do not discuss real estate in this conversation. That moves it from a conversation that is one of care to one that is about business. You can always do the business later. And I'm going to give you a simple little clue here. The word respect has 2 syllables, re and spect. Spect means to view, and re means again. So when you're dealing with people with respect, you're saying you're going to view them again and again and again. This is not the only call you're ever going to have with these people. If you care about them, indicate you care. There's plenty of time to do real estate in the next call.
Well, what I love when we were preparing for today's show is you had an excellent way to do this. Could you say more about that?
Well, sure. I call people. I ask how they're doing, find out, etc. And then a day or two later, I send them an email. And it's a short email. And it basically says, thanks for chatting. Glad to hear you're holding up. Or if they said they had a problem, asking if there's something that I can do to help. And then you just say, in these times, the market has shifted. If this should be of interest, I'm available to talk to you about it. And you don't really say much more than that. If they've got a real estate interest, they'll pick up on it. If they don't, you're still coming from a place of care and you haven't pushed it at them.
I love this. And the way that you described it a little bit earlier is the pandemic is causing changes in the real estate market. If you'd like to discuss how it's changed, you're invited to contact me. I thought that was just, it's that you spelled it out. Things have changed due to COVID-19. If you've got some real estate needs that I can be of help with, all those, any kind of combination of that. But I love this approach of using it as as your call to action in your signature line.
Correct. Not in part of the message, in the signature. Yeah.
So I'm going to have, it was great talking to you. I'm glad to hear you. And then my signature line will have that. And that's the thing I thought was so brilliant, because you can put that in all of your signature lines. And it's a great invitation for them to follow up with you.
And you're not pushing, which is, again, if you're dealing with them with respect, there's no need to push.
Now, the next one that I really liked was your approach to getting listings from Airbnb. And this is, there's a lot of stuff kind of kicking around out there about how to do that. But I really liked your approach to this, because I thought it's so spot on, and it uses what I call a turn up the pane close. And you'll see why. So Michael, could you elaborate on that, please?
Okay. So as I'm sure people are aware, there are many people who made the mistake of counting on Airbnb as being an always sure thing and said, this generates good income. I can borrow money and buy a house or buy a condo and rent it out on Airbnb, and it'll provide a healthy income stream for me. And until a few months ago, that actually seemed to work very well. Right now, that's not working so good. To the extent that this is not your one and only investment property, this could be causing a problem. The Wall Street Journal had an article about this, and they had some poor lady who went from generating a net $10,000 a month to being out $20,000 a month. She has a serious issue. So if you pick up from that, the question is, how do you find the people that own Airbnb properties so that you can send them a note that says the same thing? The market has changed. Would you like to chat? Now, the way you do it is as follows. Every Airbnb listing has a map. The map comes from Google, and the Google map contains latitude and longitude. The hard way is to go in and scrape one at a time. The easy way is to go into a website called Inside Airbnb, look for the data sets, and if your city happens to be one where they scrape all the time, you can download a once-a-month data set for free. That includes all the latitudes and longitudes of all the Airbnb listings.
So now, when I have this latitude and longitude, what do I do with it next? I mean,
now you need to stick it in what's called a reverse geocoder.
A reverse geocoder. Okay, this sounds kind of above my pay
grade. Geocoding is taking an address and turning it into latitude and longitude. So if you have the latitude and longitude and you do that in reverse, you will get the address. The best one, and it's extremely inexpensive, is actually operated by Texas A&M.
Oh, okay.
So you can go onto the TAMU site, and you can, if you just Google TAMU reverse geocoding.
So that's Texas A&M reverse geocoding, okay.
They will give you the first 2,500 lookups for free.
Oh, really? Well, that's very good.
All right, and after that, they're dirt cheap. And you put it in, and okay, it's a public university, so it's not instant. It might take 10 minutes. And at the end of 10 minutes, they give you back not only the street address, but the property tax ID number. So now you have, here's the street address of the Airbnb property. Here's the tax ID number. You now need to find a way of reaching these people. Again, a do and a don't. Don't use the phone number that's in the Airbnb listing.
Because maybe on the do not call list.
Well, no. Most of these people that have invested in Airbnb don't want to manage the property themselves. So that phone number goes to a property manager. The property manager is not interested in helping you help sell the property out from underneath them. That is not what they had in mind. So what you need to do is find a way to use the address to look up who the owner is and their email address. The best service that I use for that is something called Cole Realty Resource.
Okay, Cole Realty.
C-O-L-E, Cole.
C-O-L-E, okay.
They charge roughly $250 a quarter. They give you unlimited lookups. And you just take all the addresses, feed them in, and it will come back with as many names and email addresses as they can pull out.
Now, can I bulk load this? I don't have to enter them in one at a time, do I?
You can enter them in 1,000 at a time.
So I can just cut and paste them 1,000 at a time?
Actually, they have a little formatted template that they want you to use and stick to it, because if you deviate from it, it doesn't work. But if you use their template, you can do 1,000 at a time, and it comes back, and it's nice and quick, and it works really well.
And so what do I get from that, from Cole Realty Resource then?
So now you started with the street address. So now you have the street address, you have the name, and you have the email, and you might even have a phone number. All right, so now we have a set of emails. Next, do and don't. Do, run all the emails that you get through an email verification program.
Okay, and some resources for that are?
The best one is called Million Verifier.
Million Verifier, I haven't heard of that one.
So they will verify, and to give you an idea of why they called that, their normal charge for 1 million email verifications for the rest of your life, and it may take you that long to do a million, is $300.
Oh my goodness.
$500,000, I believe, is $200. So if you only need to run a small number, you know, you're going to get a $10 charge. Why do you want to do this? What you don't want to do is send an email to something that is designed to catch spam, that is old and expired, or that is literally there as what's called a catch-all, which is literally just to go fishing for spam and scam things, there's no reason to send emails to those people. So you want to clean that out of the list.
Well, that makes
Now
sense.
you have a list of people, you have the addresses of their property, you have a way of reaching them. What is it you want to say to them? Well, now you've got to do a little bit of more work, one at a time. For every address, in order to sound like an expert, you want to go into one of the services that tells you what these things should rent for. So there's a service called MashVisor, so like Mash and Advisor without the AD in the middle. And there's another service called Airbnb DNA. Those two services will tell you if you put in an address, they'll show you what they believe the property should rent for, and they will give you historic data of what it has rented for.
Wow. Now, how do they know the historic data? I mean,
They
that's
scrape every day.
so there's, I mean, this is a little bit of a complex process. So you have to go in, you have to do the geocoding, then you need to verify the emails, and then you need to go through and identify, you know, what, you know, the rental on this. Now, what do you say once you've done that? So, you know,
well, now you're ready with a good email. So let's assume, Bernice, that you own 123 Main Street.
mm-hmm.
So the email can be, Bernice, in these times of pandemic, the economics of the marketplace are changing. The computer analysis I looked at suggests that you should have been earning roughly $3,500 a month from your house at 123 Main Street. Has that kept up for you? If it hasn't, you may want to be looking at alternatives before the change in the market affects your credit score. I would be happy to help you. With your permission, I'll send you a CMA over the next few days of what 123 Main might be worth. Please look through it, and then let's chat. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be of service.
Great email. So this is highly targeted. So what you're doing essentially is you've got a funnel and you're narrowing down who goes into it down to, you know, so maybe if I'm working in an area that has 1,000 homes, maybe there's 25, 30, 40 of them that have actually are Airbnb rentals. So, you know, I'm not going to be trying, unless you're trying to do a big national thing, but, you know, for me locally as a local agent, if I could identify 25 to 40 Airbnbs that could be potential listings, that's huge. And then send them a personalized email. I could also email, I assume that the contact information has a mailing address for the owner or no?
Well, if you want the mailing address, the next thing that you do is, if you have access to RPR or to Remine, look up the address in either RPR or Remine. It will not only give you the property owner's mailing address, but it'll tell you how they financed the property. So you know whether somebody paid cash or they went out and leveraged themselves. The people that
They're in big trouble right now.
Well, the people that paid cash are probably looking to switch from Airbnb rentals to long-term rentals. And if that's your thing, you can offer to help them with that. But if they're leveraged, they're going to need to sell. And you know that, but you don't have to tell them you know that. Let it slowly develop. Send them information that indicates you understand where they're coming from. Here's what's going on in their market. Here's what their home or investment property might be worth, and then hang back. As the pressure increases, and if you just gently keep sending them these home valuations every couple of weeks, they'll pick up the phone.
Well, this is I love the strategy here and what you're doing now. You've got, you know, they have these services that predict who's going to sell, but this is the way that you can do it through your own back office. So how long did, you know, you sent out, what, 5,000 of these to Portland, Oregon? You know, how long did it take you to go through and put your list together that you, for the people you want to contact?
For Portland, the better part of a weekend.
Okay, so if this is something you could do as a project for your business, you did it with 5,000 over the weekend. Michael's just giving you the steps, and we'll have this written in the write-up on this so people can, you know, this is great stuff, Michael. Now you've got one more thing here
Bernice,
Yeah.
I have to give them one caution.
Yes.
If the Airbnb is in an apartment building, if you cannot figure out what the apartment number is, do not send this out to everyone in that building. They will hate you. All right. So if 123 Main is a house, great. If 123 Main is a house that has 2 properties on it, still great. The owner probably lives in the front half or the back half, and the Airbnb is the other half. But if it's a 10-story apartment building, don't send it to the 50 people that live in the apartment building. Yeah, one of them is right, but the other 49 are going to be very upset.
Well, the other thing you can do, you can see who the owner is and you can back into that. So that's how, you told them how to do that. Now you have one more suggestion here, which I thought was really brilliant. And this is essentially a lot of people are in trouble right now, and especially if they own their own business and they're looking for sources of money. And, sometimes they can't, they can't get a loan right now. The loan processors are so backed up, and it's just everything's a mess right now. So you have a different way that works really well. Could you say more about that?
Sure. So, and I've got a couple of websites that show people this. So the East Coast one is called Suddenly Home Poor, and the West Coast one is called Suddenly House Poor. And there's 2 because people on the East Coast shouldn't advertise on the West Coast and vice versa. But the idea is actually a fairly simple one. If you own a house where you are struggling to make the payments, or you've actually asked for forbearance, and as of today, 5 million mortgages are in forbearance.
Wow. Didn't realize.
Which is roughly 8% of all of them.
That's a big
So
number.
1 in 12 have asked for forbearance. Forbearance is great. You don't have to pay this month.
Mm-hmm.
But the piper comes due. And there are 2 problems. The first problem is you've got to figure out how to pay what was forbeared, either at the end or in a lump sum. And the second is there's a note that goes on your credit report. That note could cost you 100 points.
Really? Because I thought the requirements is that the forbearance wouldn't have any impact on your credit report.
It's not allowed to be reported as a negative event, but there's a note that the bank puts in the notations, in the discussion section. And it says that this mortgage is in forbearance, thereby giving a red flag to the next person who wants to lend to you that you've had an issue. But there is a solution.
Okay.
The solution is that most Americans are living in too much house, which when money was good was great. Hey, look, when I moved to Boston, the first property I moved into because it was cheap was a 3,200 square foot townhouse, and there was just me and the dog. All right, I've downsized to 1,500 square feet, but there's still just me and the dog.
We downsized from 4,700 into 2,200, and we needed 2 offices, so.
Yeah. So what is the trick? The trick is that you probably can preserve your lifestyle and downsize to a house that costs 10% less.
Or even more, in my case.
The rooms will be a little smaller.
Pardon me?
But the rooms will be a little smaller, but you don't necessarily have to give up on the number of rooms.
That's right. And you certainly don't have to give up on the lifestyle either, And,
right. And in most cases, you don't even have to give up on the neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So you want to sell the expensive house, buy a house that is 10 or 15% cheaper. That frees up money. But you can do better. When you go to buy the new house, there are a number of firms that do what they call shared appreciation deals. And this is exactly what it sounds like. They will give you money today up front in return for 2 promises. When you sell the house, you'll give them back the money they loaned you, and you will give them a share of however the house appreciates. And they're fair about this. If it depreciates, that's their risk too. The companies that do this, their deal tends to be in the magnitude order of, I'll give you 10% of the value of the house. I want 1/3 of the future appreciation.
You know, that when you first told me about that seemed like it was a little bit of a high number. But if I'm, you give me your reasoning, share this, because I thought it was spot on.
Well, there's two parts. The first thing is they're charging you zero. So the cash carry cost is nothing.
Precisely. Refi, all these other things, you pay a lot of additional fees. So this
Not only that, but when you refi, you pay interest every month.
Yes.
This is a loan that has an interest rate of zero. There's a back end interest rate. It's a big balloon, but it's zero while it's going on. The next piece of it is, if you are in a situation where you are currently paying PMI is extremely expensive because you pay PMI on the entire mortgage, even though you're only doing it on the part that is in excess of the 80%. If this can give you the cash to get below 80% and you can kiss PMI goodbye, you have just lowered your monthly expenses by a huge amount. So let's take an example. I sell a $500,000 house. I buy a $450,000 house. I go to one of these shared appreciation people and they give me $45,000. I use $20,000 of it to get me below PMI, and I put $25,000 in the bank. I now have a cash emergency fund. When wave 2 and 3 of the pandemic hits and I have my next problem, I actually have cash in the bank. And I did it without destroying my lifestyle and feeling like I have this huge weight on my shoulders from increased debt, because in reality, I reduced my debt.
And they're essentially betting on the appreciation on the property. See, and you don't have to pay this until you sell. That's generally how that's set up, right?
But let's take again, so that you bought a $450,000 house. Let's assume that you sell it in 7 or 8 years for $600,000. So there was $150,000 appreciation. These people gave you 45, and they want 1/3 of that appreciation. So when you go to sell the house, you give them the 45 back and 50,000 of the 150. You still keep 100. That 100 is 100 you weren't going to get your hands on if you had stayed in your old house. Then unable to make payments, and the bank took the house away from you.
Now, this is this model I think is brilliant for what's going on right now. Now, who are some of the companies that are doing this, and are they national?
They are national. The ones that I have done business with is a company called Unison, not to be confused with Unison, the drug you take to sleep on an airplane. Point, simple as it sounds, and a company called HomeTap. And there are some others, but those are the 3 that I have dealt with. And again, the general range is 10% of the price of the property in exchange for 1/3 of the future appreciation or depreciation.
Limits on price range?
Most of these folks will start $250,000 and up. Most of them will not go over $1.5 or $2 million.
So this could put me into the luxury market then, huh?
Yes.
Wow.
Now, I will point out to you right now, U.S. Bank, as of last week, went back to making jumbo loans.
Okay.
All right. Now, they won't do their program with only 10% down, but as long as you put 11% down or more, U.S. Bank is still making jumbo loans up to $2 million.
Wow.
So if you did that and you combined it with this, there's your 10%. So you now only have to put in a couple percent of your own money.
And you get down below 20% and get above 20%, excuse me, in the down payment, no PMI.
Right.
This is just amazing. So, Michael, if people want to see what you're doing, they can go to suddenlyhousepoor.com or suddenlyhomepoor.com to get an idea about what you're doing in this area. But these are fantastic ideas. Do you have a final takeaway for our viewers today?
We're in a time of stress and people are very worried about the pandemic and their families, etc. If you actually treat people with respect and care, they will remember that. Put real estate on the back shelf in your first few interactions with people. Fine, they know you're a realtor, it's in your signature line, but treat them as people. Treat them as members of your community. Treat them the way you would want to be treated. You will get it back in multiples. And don't do what I've seen too many realtors do, which is the, how are you coping? Remember, if you need real estate, I'm here for you. No one cares. They care about their family. Show them you care about their family too.
Michael, what a great way to end. Thank you so much. What a great session this has been. We've been visiting with Michael Lissack, and you can check out his sites at suddenlyhousepour.com and suddenlyhomepour.com. And again, Michael, thank you for being with us today. This was a terrific session.
Thank you, Bernice. You're always a wonderful pleasure.